The Evening Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio.
Hello and welcome to the podcast this week. As usual, I have the beautiful and wonderful Sarra Elgin with me. Sarra, how are you?
Oh, I love my intros so much, honestly.
Oh, I'm always that nice to you.
You are always that nice to me.
know.
I know, I'm saying I love it. I'm very well, thank you, Lawrence. How are you?
I got to be honest, I'm a little bit tired.
Are you? Why
Yes.
are you tired?
Well, because when I played, I only played one game a week, didn't I? But now that we're working, and I'm not complaining about it, I'm doing 2 games a week, and I was at Saracens. And then I had to travel up to Leicester. And normally it's all very good, but there's train strikes at the moment, and it's a Sunday, and it's been a bit painful. A long day yesterday.
Have you waited till you got in here to like release your moanage to us?
To moan.
Yes.
Well, I thought I'd let you moan first, and then off the podcast.
I have been
and
moaning
then
today.
I'd come in, but no, I'm all right. Thanks. Just a little bit weary.
It was also very cold this weekend, wasn't it?
It was cold, but and normally when it's cold, you get to run around and get warm. But it was wet up at Leicester.
Oh, where was your black jacket from on Friday? Love
Which
that.
one?
Yeah,
the long one, the
long
matrixy one.
Yeah,
It was
love
Zara. The majority of
Look
my
at
clothes
you,
are
pretending
Zara.
like you were really looking at it. Eh?
And I'm looking at your glasses, actually. This is so random.
Well.
Have you got new glasses?
Well, they are new because I lost them yesterday.
Oh, okay. So you got new ones.
I have invested in a really, really good pair of glasses.
Yeah.
And any people listening out there, and they stay at home, they never leave the house.
Okay.
Then these are £4.50 each. Right.
They look actually very expensive.
They're £4.50 each because I've got about 20 pairs of these because I seem to lose a lot of
No,
things.
I'm just saying because I think I need glasses. I think I've gotten to that age. Yeah.
Can you read that over there? Or
You
not?
do when you
What,
read.
the big sign that says rugby podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio? I can just about
you're
manage
all right
that,
then.
Steve.
It's not too bad.
You do need glasses, especially when you're looking at your watch in London.
Because our guest this week is the founder of a charity whose goal is to open up conversations about mental health, especially within the rugby community. It's Simon Trower. How are you, Simon?
I'm good, thank you.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege. So yeah, thank you.
Well,
It's really good to
it's
have
our
you.
privilege, and
Yeah.
next time we'll turn up on time and make sure that we don't leave you waiting.
That's fine.
But Simon, it's very timely that we've got you on as our guest. Round 8, which we all watched of the Premiership this weekend, was in support of the RPA's Restart charity and dedicated to raising awareness of players' mental health. And of course, with recent announcements, and there have been many actually, from Owen Farrell that he's going to take a break from international rugby to prioritise his and his family's mental well-being, there couldn't really be a better time to have you on the show and bring this topic to the table and I guess have an honest conversation about it. I know your reason for setting up BraveMind is a very poignant and personal one. Are you happy to share that story with us and how come you came about to set up and start the charity?
Yeah, of course. That was my main purpose, to be honest, is sort of demonstrate vulnerability. And if I can help one person, then yeah, I've done my job, to be honest. So BraveMind was started, 2020. So lockdown. I think it was a massive time for reflection for everybody. But for me, it was around thinking about the 2 main passions in my life, which was rugby and my own mental health journey. My rugby journey started from the age of 6. I was born into a rugby household. My dad was involved with the first team, second team. My mum used to cook the teas in the amateur days. My brother played. My sister dated our mates. It was a family environment. Every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday was a rugby club. And I was an anxious child. I was talking to Steve before we came on air. I speak to my parents now and say, what was I like as a kid? And they'll say, yeah, you were quite a nervy kid, but rugby was my therapy. It was something that I'd go and play, just forgot everything that was off the pitch for 80 minutes. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 21. Had a career-ending injury when I was 25, 26. I was in an environment, it was the old championship back then at Henley Rugby Club where Sir Clive started his coaching journey. So I was always kind of annoying him on a training night. And it just sort of developed from there, really. And it got to 2019, where I offered my services at a local club just to coach. And a young lad joined us pre-season that year who was extremely open about his mental health. And for me, it was a big, wow, I'm not used to that. I'm 45. When I was playing, you just didn't mention it at all. It was very much a pull your socks up kind of environment. Extremely masculine environment, let's call it that. But this lad, had played England students. He was at Bath University, but he attempted on his own life. But he was extremely open about his mental health, and he really inspired me. We went into lockdown, and for me, that was a case of, look, I want to learn more about my own mental health journey, try and help others, and if I can combine that with my love of rugby, because I can't play it anymore. No. But it sounds a bit strange, but rugby sort of defines me as an individual. It was part of me that was missing. And if I can't play it, what else can I do? Yeah. And that's kind of how it started.
So, when you say that during lockdown you started to learn more about your mental health journey, what did you learn? What did you address maybe at that period of time, maybe that you hadn't before then?
Yeah, so I went on a mental health first aid course, which was a 2-day course. Just met some amazing people on that from all different walks of life. Learned a huge amount, and that just sort of confirmed that I definitely wanted to learn more about this space. Because I still struggle with it now on a daily basis. I was put on antidepressants when I was 21. I'm still on them now at 45. I want to come off them eventually, but equally I don't want to rock the boat. So it was trying to learn and educate myself on it. The different challenges that people can go through, whether it's self-harm, eating disorders. There's a huge amount out there that it's people are struggling with.
Yeah, and just give us an idea then about how you're going about affecting the changes that you want to see. Rugby, completely understand that it's been your life right from an early age, your family. You're working with organisations and predominantly rugby clubs. What type of things are you doing with them, or is the charity doing with them to kind of affect the change that BraveMind would like to see?
So predominantly working with grassroots rugby clubs, rugby teams in universities, colleges, schools. I was talking to England Touch Rugby this morning. We've helped Berkshire Unicorns, the inclusive rugby team. So, initially when I first started it was very much men's mental health. Yeah. Then I thought, this should just be, let's promote the game of rugby. Yeah. Let's just try and help anybody.
Yeah. And when you say help, what do you actually, tell us a little bit about what you're actually doing?
Yeah, so we've got a Club Together initiative that we do. So we get around sort of 15, 16 people, so different representatives from across the rugby club, whether that's minis and juniors, women's section, whoever basically. We train them in mental health first aid and mental health awareness sessions. We've got a team of sports psychologists that we have on board that we've developed evidence-based sessions around dealing with stress, dealing with pressure, and we deliver that as part of the package. So that's what we're doing at the moment across the country.
It's funny, you talk about pulling your socks up. You might want to be saying that during your career, you had some pretty testing moments, losing the England captaincy. What sort of help did you get when you were playing?
Well, not a great deal. As we've already heard, mental health were two very distinct words, as mental and health. No one really understood the game of professional rugby anyway, certainly at my level, because we were doing things very much for the first time. You were expected to just cope with lots of things on your own, really. And no one really knew what the implications were of being a professional rugby player. We were the first people to do it. So until you've been there 5, 6, a period of time, and there's been a bit of research and a bit of understanding, then you look back and think, well, what are the pressures? And I suppose I always had a reference point. I lost my sister, which I talk about very openly on various different podcasts. And that was the reason why I got into rugby, because I needed a family and a support system to help me and my parents. So yes, there's highs and lows in sport, and in rugby particularly. You win games, you lose games. I've been on the front page of the newspaper, sadly, been on the back page, happily, and every page in between. But the perspective is the important thing. When you've been in quite a different, dark place like I was when I lost my sister, anything that happens thereafter is probably, if I lose a game of rugby, of course I'm disappointed. If I lose for my country, I'm even more disappointed. But it's not like the same as getting the news that your sister's not coming home again, So I was always able to put it in perspective and not be too upset. But we are up until more recently, a very male-dominated environment. It's quite macho, it's quite alpha male. Of course, we have issues and problems, but I think that it's the ultimate team game, but yet you sometimes, players and people within rugby clubs still feel very much on their own. And we used to have little kind of ways of trying to cope with it, which was to make sure that you paired people up within the club with someone else. And if there was like a buddy or or a mentor, and if there was issues that you wanted to talk about that you didn't want to talk about openly in front of the coach or in front of maybe more senior players like myself, you could go and speak to your buddy and just have someone to, to have your back, really.
Who was yours? Who was your buddy?
Well, I've had many, actually. I went through quite a few. I was at the same club for 20 years, don't forget. So I think within the England team, it was Neil Back, actually.
Okay.
That was my guy.
I feel, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like things have started to change recently. That it's a known fact or fact, but the men are particularly bad at talking about their feelings and how they react to situations. But I do feel when you have prominent and well-known people, especially in the sporting environment, come out and talk about their mental health journey, it has seemed to help, hasn't it? Do you feel like we're moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. COVID, although it was horrific for a lot of people, it had a positive impact because it put mental health up the agenda. I think if you look at Owen, recently talking about his challenges, it's incredibly sad that a guy that was got 112 caps, leading point scorer, but on the positive element, somebody like that who's a leader, who's actually probably put things into perspective.
Yeah.
But I know, listen, it is sad to a point, but I don't think it is sad. I think it's actually very good, because what it does is it shows everyone in our sport, in the world generally, that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how high up the tree you climb and you get to. It's, you have the same issues. And in many ways, a lot of the stigma around mental health for people maybe that don't play at Owen's level is that, that's a problem that affects me. It doesn't affect anyone else. And for those who maybe think that Owen is incredibly resilient, which he is, and he has shown that, there's a vulnerability there in
That's
all,
the word, I
in,
think.
in all of us,
Yeah.
in all of us. And the fact is that we should recognise that, and it shouldn't take Owen Farrell to have to do that himself or the people around him at Saracens. The game doesn't really look after the individual. The recovery has got much, much better in our game of rugby, no doubt about that. Players are looked after, they're rested a tiny bit better than they ever used to be, but it doesn't look after the individual.
No.
And we are obsessed in rugby union with measurement. We measure lineouts, we measure scrums, we measure metres made, all these kind of stats. The one area you can't measure, and I say this all the time, is what's going on in people's head.
Yeah.
And
not what you see is
and
what...
if you could
we
measure
don't know
that,
what's going on.
Exactly.
you'd be a very, very wealthy person. But the reality is that it is important. When we talk about player welfare and we talk about resting players, it's about resting their minds as well.
Yeah.
And look, I reflected this weekend. It's a pretty sad weekend in our sport, really. We've had international referees had death threats. We've had Tom Foley, who's just said, I'm stepping away from the international game. I've had enough, because he was the TMO in the World Cup final.
Yeah.
We've got Owen Farrell, who is most high profile, but I'm sure there's a number of other players who probably feel the same way. We've had a pundit on our channel who's been racially abused. I mean, is that society or is that rugby? Because there are some serious issues that we could tackle across all of it. I mean, our game's gone mad, is it?
Do you talk about lockdown? Actually, for me, I mean, obviously, I'm not a sportsman. I'm just doing what I do and doing the job. But I've actually found that I've struggled more to cope with the changes that have come post-lockdown rather than during lockdown, because I think for men, our roles have changed so much in such a short space of time. A lot for the better.
In what way?
Well, I see a lot more now of my children than I ever did. But obviously, when I was in the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30, that's your role. So that's your job. That's what you're expected to do. Whereas now you've got the leeway, and you're able to do a little bit more in terms of hybrid working. So you can be here, you could be there. But now you're a little bit more, and there's a little bit more expectation on, well, you will have more of a role to play with the kids, and you will do a little bit more. And then you're trying to balance. I mean, there are days when you get through and you go, I haven't given enough to work, I haven't given enough to my family, and I haven't given enough to myself. And you get to the end of that and go, what did I actually achieve today? And then you start processing it backwards again, and you think, well, all right, I'll try and do it again tomorrow. But you don't want, I guess, that to spiral in a way.
The critical thing you said there, though, is that I'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, is just trying again. And it can be, there's this 5-minute rule where you just try something for 5 minutes. And that could be having a shower or getting out of bed, or, just doing some really small mundane tasks. But it's just trying. I think that's the thing. And recognizing that, I've had a bad day. Things like that happen, and it's saying, right, tomorrow's a new day. Let's try again.
Yeah, Simon, I'm really intrigued. You obviously are having conversations through your own experiences with rugby players across the board, from grassroots, as you mentioned, all the way up to international superstars. I know we've had Marley Packer on the show. She's a ambassador for this charity, BraveMind. We've got the likes of the Willis brothers, et cetera, et cetera. What are the challenges that you're hearing from some of your grassroots players all the way up to the top end of the game, to someone like Marley Packer?
I think it's just overcoming that fear of feeling ashamed, feeling embarrassed. I think that element of vulnerability and being open with yourself is huge. And I think what I'm seeing is if someone's in a bad place, you can offer support, you can offer help. If they don't want to help themselves, they won't improve. That's the big thing.
How do you get someone to talk though who doesn't want to talk?
Oh, that's a very, very good question.
Do you let them? Because I'm sure that the people listening to this and maybe know that a relation or a friend is going through this, but if that person doesn't want to talk, do you leave them not talk, or is it because that's quite worrying then, or do you make them talk? Like how? I don't
think you can't make anybody talk. I think we've got to create an environment and a culture that we educate ourselves on these matters. Listening. I think there's a lot of people that are probably scared of going into this space, where actually it's just about listening and being a kind individual, being kind and supportive. It goes a long way just to listening and just to people to talk and air their thoughts. And that's a big thing, because before I started the charity, I was scared. I was scared of doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing. But actually, there's no kind of right or wrong way. I think just by being a nice human being, just listening and understanding. And I think what I meant by saying it was sad for Owen is a case of, he's taken a huge amount of abuse that didn't need to.
No,
with other people and pundits and things, that we are in this society at the moment that is. I look at it and look on Twitter and social media and just think, what is going on?
I mean, there's abuse. I mean, there's no room whatsoever for any particular personal abuse directed at anyone, quite frankly. Whenever I wrote or said things on the paper or newspaper, and don't forget, I've been the other side of it as well. I was used to think, would I be prepared to say that to someone if they were standing right in front of me there and then? And obviously, social media, doesn't allow you that.
And the issue I have with this is, right, when people are constantly telling our sports stars, or like, we don't know you. You need to show us your personalities, and then they go on social media, they go on X or whatever and show personalities, and people are there to batter them down. Yeah. So it's like there is not an answer to this, Simon, is there? There's not a right or wrong answer.
Well, I would challenge to say that there needs to be some form of policing.
Yes, well, there is that, obviously.
They need to be protected. They're put out into the spotlight. I completely get it. Sorry, if they're going to put their guard down and show vulnerability, then they become easy targets, right? So it's what is that? There's a fine line between it. But going back to what you said, Lawrence, it's like we're all human beings. There's one thing just mentioned with regards to people like Marley, Jack and Tom, and especially with young people, is when they've come to university sessions or college sessions, it's a big eye-opener for these youngsters to actually go, well, they're just normal people. Yeah. You may see them playing at Twickenham or in a World Cup or in a European Cup, but actually when they talk about their struggles off the pitch, whether that's injuries, contracts, or what's going on in their lives, there's a big light bulb moment for these youngsters to go, oh, they're just ordinary people.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with your charity? How can people, who are listening, who've got a friend or a relation who wants a bit of help, who might need a bit of help,
or they themselves need
a bit of help?
Yeah, so website bravemind.co.uk, Instagram _BraveMind, and Twitter, which is BraveMind14. So yeah, come through our DMs via that. We've got support online. We've got a team of psychologists that are available, and we just want to help. We just want to do our bit. Like I said right from the beginning, if I can, help one person, if I can prevent a suicide, then I've done my job.
Thanks for everything
Simon.
you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll be incredibly supportive of everything you're doing. Keep fighting the fight and doing what you're doing.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.